Always found it really interesting when I talk to a lot of people that have been to colleges or universities, and it seems like just about every one of them has been required as part of one of their classes or another to read the works of Friedrich Nietzsche or Karl Marx. Personally, I've never felt any compunction to read anything by Friedrich Nietzsche or Karl Marx. The reason I've never chose to read anything, well, I have read some of Nietzsche's work, but Nietzsche's a nihilist. You know, I don't know what you get out of that. Essentially, the idea that your life is meaningless and purposeless, and in the end, you'll just die, and that'll be the end of you, and no life has any kind of meaning. It's like, really? I mean, why would you fill your head with that garbage? I mean, it's depressing. I don't know how anybody lives from a nihilist point of view. Lots of people do, but I don't get it. Anyway, I've never read Friedrich Nietzsche because it just never felt like there was anything there for me. I wasn't going to get anything out of it, so I wasn't going to read it. And Karl Marx, likewise, I haven't read Karl Marx's work, but I've read some pretty intensive histories about Karl Marx, and I know enough about him and about Nietzsche to know that I don't need to read their works. I'm going to make a point here. There was one man, a very famous man, that everybody's heard of, and to him, the works of Karl Marx and Friedrich Nietzsche were like his Bible. He carried both those works with him almost everywhere he went. He was an intensive student of them. Safe to say that Nietzsche and Marx's work inspired him and helped to make him the man that he was, and inspired him to do the things that he did. In case any of you are wondering who that person is, it was Adolf Hitler. Yes, Adolf Hitler was the one who was inspired by the works of Friedrich Nietzsche and Karl Marx. And yet, our universities seem hell bent on making sure that as many students as possible are thoroughly exposed to both those books. That seems like a really dangerous mix to me. And then when I look around the world at the people that have been inspired by those books, you see very similar beliefs and behaviors and biases and biases towards certain races of people. So the reason that I know that is because of this book right here. This is called The Spear of Destiny. It's written by Trevor Ravencroft. Ravencroft was a commando back in, was born in England in 1921, and he was captured on a raid in the attempt to kill Marshal Rommel, their Field Marshal Rommel, in North Africa. He studied with a guy by the name of Walter Stein. Walter Stein, a doctor, was a contemporary of Adolf Hitler. They weren't really friends, but they knew each other. And because they had a common passion or interest in things uh, involving the supernatural. This book in particular, The Spear of Destiny, it says the occult powers behind the spear which pierced the side of Christ and how Hitler inverted the force in a bid to conquer the world. Essentially, I don't want to get too much into this. This is a weird and fascinating book, by the way, so I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. It gets down into the early histories of Adolf Hitler between World War I and World War II, his relationship with Walter Stein, and what Stein saw in him, and the things that inspired him. And a lot of you probably aren't privy to this kind of information, but as soon as Adolf Hitler came into power, he issued a warrant for arrest for Walter Stein, not because he wanted to put him in jail, but because he understood that Stein had a mind like his and he wanted to put it work researching the occult. Um, as it was, Stein fled Germany, ended up in, in ended up voluntarily putting himself into the hands of the British intelligence, and he became British intelligence's guy on all things Hitler. They're wanting to know what Hitler was thinking or doing, they would go to Walter Stein because he probably knew. So anyway, not to get down a wormhole with that, is that why is it that our universities and colleges feel the need to teach something, not just teach, because really when you think about it, they foist it, right? What the professors think is this great stuff, they need to foist it on their students to make sure that their students are absorbing it like they did. They want to turn their students into little reflections of themselves because they think that's a great thing, instead of teaching them to think for themselves and to be critical in the way that they think and assess things. I find it interesting that even though they'll teach Nietzsche and Karl Marx, they don't they don't teach any of the gospels from the Bible. They don't teach any of the letters that were written by Paul or John or James or Peter to the churches, and they go, ah, that's religion. That's religion. That's not philosophy. Well, excuse me? Isn't philosophy the search for truth based on logic and reason? So when you're saying that's religion and this is philosophy, what you're saying is that there's no search for truth or rationale or reason or logic within the works of the Bible. So you don't teach it. Even though nihilism is a form of religion in and of itself, and most certainly so is socialism and communism. They are also a belief system and a faith. You could even say that nihilism and atheism, they're synonymous, so they're both belief systems. You can say, well, they're not a belief system. They're based on facts. Well, really? Well, what facts are those? Look, experience is about what, or I should say, knowledge is about what you personally experience. If it's outside of your personal experience, you do not have knowledge of it. Belief is when you rely on evidence, right? That's outside of your personal experience, in which case you believe something. Too often, people take something like belief, some minor piece of evidence, right? And they embrace it as knowledge. Whereas what you believe should be the accumulation of your knowledge and evidence to come to a reasonable, rational conclusion that you embrace as your system of values and morals or faith. And then those things drive how you live your life, how you treat other people, the steps that you take, what's important to you, what you dislike. There's no reason to, I mean, if you look at the Bible, you will see all of those things in there. If you are a nihilist, then you believe that morality is something that man creates for himself, in which case, no man being higher than any other man chooses for themselves what morality is. What you're really saying is that morality is a democracy, or morality is an issue of force. Whoever the strongest is gets to say what's right and wrong. Well, that's not inconsistent with what the Bible says either. God exists, He's the strongest. If He exists, He created all things, He gets to say what's right and what's wrong. And He also gets to establish the penalties for what's right and wrong. Same. So if you're a nihilist and you say morality is essentially a democratic decision, we all get together and decide what's right and wrong. Whoever has the most power does, but there's no consistency in it. One person says this is right, somebody else says that's wrong, somebody else says I don't give a damn. But at least in the biblical record, there's a consistency about what's right and wrong. And men don't try to change it because we believe it comes from a place much higher than ourselves, from someone much more powerful than ourselves, with the ability to hold us all accountable for it. I don't think it's unreasonable. And you might say, well, there's no evidence for that belief system, but that's not true either. There's plenty of evidence. There's evidence in the genetic record. There's evidence in the complexity of human life. There's evidence in the fine tuning of the universe. There's all kinds of evidence. There's evidence in the historical record of what's in the New Testament. It's an accurate historical representation of what happened by eyewitnesses. That's evidence. So we have evidence. Christian has evidence. It's about what you're choosing, about what you're choosing. And I don't think people are always honest with themselves about the choices that they make. Sometimes you have a bias, you got something deep in yourself that says you want something. And because you want something, it pulls your intellect in that direction. Because your desires, they aren't thought, they're just provocation. They push you, they move you. From a biblical standpoint, we're not supposed to let that affect our intellectuality. From a biblical standpoint, you're supposed to resist the positive or the negative emotional provocations and embrace the ones that are positive, like love and compassion and sympathy. So, without getting too far down the rabbit hole, I just want to say that for any of you that are students going to college, and somebody says you need to read the works of Nietzsche or you need to read the works of Marx, you might take the time to actually study those individuals and the lives around them. And that way you can actually see what a complete and absolute disaster both of their lives were. And then ask yourself, do I really want to listen to what these guys have to say about life? You need to be more thoughtful about who you give the kind of weight to when you're reading, that you're going to let it provoke the way that you think. So, reading the biblical record for me has put me in a place where the world makes sense to me. I can look around at the world and look around at people and the way that they act and behave, and it makes sense. I don't like it all. And the other thing is this, is that if you're searching for truth, you need to be really careful, because truth isn't always what you want to hear. It might even be exactly the opposite of what you want to hear. But it's absolutely what you must hear. So take the New Testament. Jesus Christ shows up, says he's God, raises people from the dead, brings people back from life, gets crucified, brings himself back to life, says he's God, says he's coming back, says all that stuff that came before him in the Old Testament's accurate, that is who God is, that he is God, that they're one and the same, that his purpose was to die on that cross in our place so that we would no longer be estranged from God because we decided to go our own way and move against him orally. And Jesus said, I'm the only way back. I'm it. There isn't any other way. Trust me, do what I say, put my words into practice, and put your trust in me. And I will get you home. I will get you back to God. He promises life. He doesn't say your life is, it's a pointless, chaotic catastrophe that just, you're going to die and go back in the ground. No, he's saying, no, life goes on. It will go on in one of two places. It will go on in God's presence, or it will go on someplace away from God. But it will go on. And you will choose which place you're in. You. You will decide if you want to live with God, the author of all creation, of all that is beautiful, wellspring of love and truth and hope, the author of life, or someplace without creation, someplace without beauty or truth or love. Wherever that is, I don't want to be there. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is this: truth is no small matter. Truth directs your life. Truth helps to mold who you are and how your relationships go with other people. If relationships aren't going well for you, if life sucks for you, if you can't make sense of the world or other people, or your own head, if you're depressed and struggling, maybe you're looking in the wrong place for truth. Maybe you embraced things as truth which were not. And maybe you should pick a different direction. I can promise you this. I promise you this. If you are honest in your heart, if you're sincere, and you look for Christ, and you read those words about him, and you put your trust in him, it will make sense to you. And your life will absolutely change, and you will change. And the world will open up, and life will open up, and you will finally have peace. Real peace. I promise it. I guarantee it. What have you got to lose? If your life's falling apart around you, if you can't make sense of anything, if you're pissed off all the time and angry at people or sad and depressed and scared, what have you got to lose? You went down the wrong rabbit hole. Turn around, go back the other way. It's just that simple. It's not complicated.